shipments are coming in, starting with 10 gallons of Evapo-Rust. I'm going to fill this container with that stuff, and that's going to be a huge time saver because I can sink entire assemblies or large parts under Evapo-Rust, let it do its thing rather than having to do a lot of manual scrubbing. Should save some time. In terms of parts I need to have for the Jeep itself, to keep moving ahead, I've got some brake mount brackets from Amazon. I'll show you why I need those in a moment. Willys sent me a mount kit for the transfer case and the engine, along with some shim plates and a full hardware kit. I've already got 2 transmission mounts and some candy, thanks for that. And from D&L Bessinger, they're in Pennsylvania, they sent me this driver's side engine mount. This is from MD1. I believe they're the company in the Philippines that stamps out the bodies as well. And the reason I need this is to deal with the hacked together mount that we have on the driver's side. This was probably done to accommodate putting the wrong engine in here, but I've got an original mount on the passenger side and this just complete, well, you can see for yourself, situation on the driver's side. So I need to cut that off. Here's the brake mount tab, so that's why I wanted to have some on hand to be able to replace this. But I think, well, I'll say I'm 90% sure this is the right mount that will go on here. I've already punched out the remnants of the rivets from the frame. So I believe once I clean everything up off the frame, I can slide this on. I'll probably weld it and bolt it, and we'll see if that matches up with this mount for the engine that's going into it. So this is actually the correct engine for the Jeep, although I don't know for sure that it's the correct front plate. There may be other details that I'm just unaware of. So before I go cutting, welding, bolting with this thing, I want to make sure, triple sure, that this engine really is going to sit on the new engine mounts like I expect. And to do that, I really just need to hover the engine over the Jeep so that I can see where everything's going to sit in space. And to do that, I really need to have a transfer case mount and engine mounts in place. And if I'm going to do that, I also really need a transfer case and transmission. So this has been resealed. This should be a good unit, and it's already got a transmission mount on it as well as the one that's already in the Jeep frame. I actually might have 3. So I need to mount that to the engine, which is on the engine stand right now. Actually helped put this together, the accessories and such, with friends a couple years ago. The main core engine, I think it would be called the long block, was rebuilt. Should be nice and fresh, and of course painted and all that sort of stuff, looking nice. So I want to hoist this up and attach it to its transmission and transfer case. Hopefully set that up here on the table to do that. Figure out what clutch and other, shifting parts I may be missing in the process, and then just hover it over here. Triple check that I've got the right mount, in which case I can go ahead and install it for real, pull the engine, all that stuff back out, and that should be the last of the welding on the Jeep. But of course, since I just said that, there will definitely be more welding needed on the Jeep. Here's that transfer case mount pulled apart from the top side of the transfer case to underneath the frame. And this main snubber sits in this little metal raceway, but this basically presses into the frame. And so for mock-up purposes, I'm going to omit this. It's only, it's very thin, and just set this into the oversized cavity where this will eventually press in. That way I don't have to fully install it yet. And these are the motor mounts. So I'm actually going to attach these to the engine. And then instead of trying to align on these studs when they're at an angle, I'll just be lining up these holes with the existing mount that's already on the frame, and then the other one we'll be looking for, seeing how well that mount lines up with these holes. So let's do it. Here's a close-up of that snubber. You can see the space around it where that metal race will press in. Right now it's just slid over the bolt and the rubber friction's holding it in place. So the transmission mount needs to drop into these 2 holes, which will be pretty straightforward. And then I've got an engine mount to sit on here, and another engine mount will float in space. Before I cut this off, I want to get a rough idea of where that thing's going to land. Well, that was pretty sketchy, but I did get a clamp on here and some wood underneath, and the thing, believe it or not, is stable on its own right now. So next is to hoist up the transmission transfer case. The awesome thing about slings is that they have a lot of grip on the part you're lifting, so they prevent twisting and allow you to do things hopefully like this. Yeah. Oh man, this is going to be awesome. Between the sling being at the balance point here and the light weight of this transmission, let me just basically manhandle it around in combination with the crane. I'm just going to be able to set it right down where I need to mount it to the engine. I'm not going to put the clutch, throw out bearing, all that stuff in here yet. I just literally want to screw this onto the engine to make a whole assembly and set it into the Jeep. So for now, I'm just putting in some temporary bolts to do just that. All right, trans is attached just with its 4 bolts. Kind of amazing, that's all it takes. 2 in the top, 2 in the sides. So now it's all one big assembly. I've got it rigged back up around the transmission kind of tunnel and this portion around the water pump. It's nice to have a grab point up high so that it, the whole assembly is kind of stable. Anyways, let's go ahead and drive it over to the Jeep. The Willys, that is. This mounts. So far so good. This crane moves faster than anyone ever wants it to move. So you gotta kind of pump it. Like that's lined up this way. I'll do the manual move over to the Jeep and bring it back when I'm hovering over it. Okay, the rear is mounted, and up here in the front for the passenger side engine mount, I've used a couple screwdrivers to guide it into place. The reason is the whole mount was pretty far rearward and it wasn't lining up. I think it's because this front engine plate has some bend to it. And I've read that that can happen if you have a sudden stop or you take a really big hit on the front axle. The engine wants to keep going and those plates will end up bending rearward. So I think I can take the bend out of that, but it is in the place it needs to be. And so when I pick up my mount and hold it in place, lengthwise up and down the frame, that's where the holes are for the rivets, and that looks pretty well lined up. And in terms of how far away it is from the frame, of course I can't put it right in place, but those holes kind of approximate it, and that looks good. So I'm pretty confident this is the mount now, and so I need to pull everything back out and chop off this mount. Got to do some frame repair, got to install a brake mount bracket at some point, maybe not now, but once I repair this frame, I'll put this on there. I may drill these holes out so that they match the rivet holes on the frame for alignment, but ultimately I think I'll bolt it and weld it. So let's get this thing out of here, set it off to the side. It doesn't have a clutch and all the hardware needed inside of there anyways. So that's one project I can work on in tandem with getting this frame all nice, cleaned up and painted. Cool. Got the mount off with minimal damage, maybe no damage to the original frame. So now it's a little slower process of grinding out this little excess weld, squaring it all back up, and there's more to remove down here too. I think I actually may pull out the rivet, which is down here, and then, I don't know. Somehow I need to get this little layer of the old mount removed, so better get started. And the lower steel is loose. Ground the rivet heads off and cut right through the booger welds. This would be easier if I turn the Jeep up on its side, but I think I can get it from the bottom. Just gonna knock those out with the chisel, come back and do some more finish grinding. The engine's moved to this big heavy table, and this whole contraption is set up for straightening this front plate. This one you can't see as well, the other one you can. It's bent rearward, and I've done as much as I can with the BFW, but it's time to turn to something else, and that's wisdom. So I've got a chain hook on the plate, and it's pointing exactly where I want to pull it. You can actually see in there, there's like, well, I don't know if you can, but basically there's a gap even where that front gasket goes on because this plate is bent backwards. So I've got a bolt that's gonna locate the chain and keep it from sliding down. It's gonna pull exactly where I want, and as a resisting force, got this big sling around the block, chained to the table, and I'm hoping that all the forces work out and I can precisely just nudge this plate forward with wisdom. So here we go. How does this thing work? This is how forward I had to bend it in order to get the correct spring back. You can see it's kind of extreme looking. But at the same time, you do see the gasket underneath is closing up. It's not going to be perfect. We might still be adding some silicone to make that seal, but this is actually, believe it or not, going to return to straight when I release it. All right, this is as good as it's been. The transmission's sitting all the way down in its mount. The transfer case mount is snugged up. On this passenger side, I just centered up this new rubber mount on the frame support and figured that would be a starting point, but it does have adjustment built into it. But I didn't need that. In the end, even though this replacement mount or support for the driver's side is far from perfect, I think it's gonna be workable. It's a good enough starting point to make it work. So you can see that it doesn't have the right bends in it for the frame in 2 dimensions. That is this way on the, the top and bottom flange, but then also its own top and bottom flange aren't parallel. So it's sort of like kicked out. Anyways, what I did is I just went ahead and put the rubber engine mount into the center of the slots on this new frame support. And then the frame support, I connected to the frame itself with just, I think these are 5/16 bolts. Just basically got them to the point where they would go through both sets of holes. A lot of bending and using screwdrivers and pins to basically force things into place. So it's under tension right now. Once all those holes are lined up, this flange did actually end up being in the right place. So at this point, the weight of the engine is on the engine mounts and the transmission mounts, transfer case mount. The top of the head is fairly parallel with the bumper, so that's a good sign. And then as a final check, I did drop in a radiator, and you can see that even before I put any pads under the radiator support, we're centered up pretty well with plenty of clearance all the way around the fan. So once I put those isolator rubber pads down underneath the radiator, there's going to be, even more clearance. So that's the minimum right there, and it's totally fine as is. So we're in good shape, and I'm ready to start making this permanent. The plan of attack is to snug this down with the bolts, and then I will probably take the engine off, take the mount off, start hitting these bends with a torch, and use clamps and snugging these bolts. I think I can actually form this bracket to actually, match the frame. Main problem is down here inside. You can't see it very well, but I need to make that internal bend much tighter so that it can flatten up to the frame. But like I say, with a torch, I can make this into silly putty and just clamp it down. When it cools, it'll be a perfect fit, he says in theory. Well, if I do much more torching, I'll need to invest in a filter for my camera because, as you can imagine, it's pretty tough to capture that on video. But I was totally successful in bending this bracket to my will using lots of heat and lots of wisdom in the form of clamps and pry bars and hammers, anything I can get my hands on. But it does fit perfectly now, and I'm really happy to have that done. So the next thing I'm going to focus on is actually removing any extra bolts or brackets from this frame that don't need to be here when I go to paint it. So I'm going to keep on working on that. In the next video, I'm going to try out some wet blasting as well as some acid etching and go through whatever processes I need to get this frame and suspension ready to apply some good chassis paint. So come on back for that if you're interested. And if you found this video interesting, do me a favor and hit that like button. Leave any questions, comments, advice down below. And until the next one, thanks a lot for watching.